You're with Jason Bermas on today's News Talk, TNT.
It is now time to talk about the very real invisible forces that surround us and bind us as humanity. And I'm going to talk about the manipulation of the knowledge surrounding these forces. Now, I want to start by saying, we ain't talking imagination land. I'm not getting spiritual on you. Let's start with some common knowledge for those that can actually remember some of the things that they learned in grade school, middle school, high school, and college if you went there, took some baseline courses. Magnetic fields. Hell, take a look at the logo for TNT, which is a globe. It's got the little lines on there, longitude, latitude, and through this, many of us understood there were these invisible magnetic forces and these poles that controlled a lot of their movement. Now, we don't see those a lot or ever. Okay, they're not part of our visual universe. And that brings me to this first story where we're going to get a little bit deep here on NASA, space, and our knowledge about it. NASA has now announced it has found a new electrical field surrounding the planet as important as gravity. Okay? Now, I want that to sink in for people right now. First of all, we've had many individuals, probably the one that people know about the most, Nikola Tesla, talking about this invisible force and harnessing energy wirelessly. And obviously, we are, as human beings, able to manipulate invisible fields all the time. See, we're going to continue with this. Think about your little magic box. It operates through invisible fields. Think about the Wi-Fi, and we see none of this. However, it sees us. And what do I mean by that? Well, once you have these waves bouncing off things, there are ways to read them, and they can be utilized for surveillance at the very least. And that's not what I'm getting to here with these invisible electrical fields that we've seen. What I'm telling you is, in large part, we have been lied to on a mass level, okay, about what is really going on, not only with our planet, but beyond. I'm going to give you another example. The idea that all of space is the same thing, okay, and is just a quote-unquote vacuum, I think is absolutely ludicrous. People don't understand that what? We discovered a lot of the things we know about our atmosphere, stratosphere, ionosphere, through NASA, through these programs that were generated post-World War II. And that these things are extremely dangerous, extremely volatile when you're using any technology, especially rocket technology. Now, that brings me to this. I'm not one of these people that thinks that space is fake or the earth is flat or that we're surrounded by a quote unquote firmament in the sense that it's a dome-like structure we cannot penetrate. It's not what I'm saying here. Just want to make that extremely clear. What I am saying is space is way more dangerous than is portrayed. And we act like we know so much as human beings because the science, right, demands that we obey its mantras. Remember, NASA is very much behind this climate agenda. Oh, really? You're really? Now, we talked about carbon footprints with warfare. When rockets go off, what do you realize that's rocket fuel, right? And by the way, we're going to get to rocket science. But space in general is not a place that's friendly to humans. And we've had the ISS, the International Space Station, for a very long time. Now, remember, we've been doing this for a long time, so people would think that we are able to master this, go up and down, I forget the exact thing, but it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what they tell you the moon is, folks. Just want to make that extremely clear. I mean, with the moon, they're telling you almost 250,000 miles away. For this orbit, it's nowhere near that. And by the way, all of it's surveilled by Starlink. I mean, we're talking about like 100 plus miles up in the air, that type of thing. And they very dangerous. So we're going to play this clip. And right now, we're looking at these astronauts being stranded because of the technology that Boeing is using, this rocket technology and all these leaks, okay? And basically, these people are stranded until at least February. They're supposed to be off by now, but they're even talking about years. So let's hit that clip.
New this morning, a stunning announcement from NASA.
NASA has decided that Butch and Sonny will return with Crew 9 next February.
NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams were aboard Boeing Starliner's historic launch in June, the first with a crew, but they were only supposed to be in space for a week. NASA now says they'll return from the International Space Station 8 months past schedule on a SpaceX Dragon capsule, Boeing's biggest competitor.
This has not been an easy decision, but it is absolutely the right one.
The troubled Boeing Starliner spacecraft has been plagued by helium leaks and thruster issues. NASA testing to find out whether Starliner could fly home with Butch and Sonny on board, but the risk ultimately too high.
We have had mistakes done in the past. We lost 2 space shuttles as a result of there not being a culture in which information could come forward.
Boeing released this statement saying they continue to focus first and foremost on the safety of the crew and spacecraft.
Here we are in the front of the International Space Station.
NASA insisting Butch and Sonny have plenty of supplies to get them through and confident, despite the major setback, in Starliner's future.
Senator Nelson, how certain are you that Boeing will ever launch Starliner with a crew on board again?
100%.
Now, as for what happens next, the SpaceX Dragon capsule will save 2 seats for Butch and Sonny when it heads to the ISS. But before that, Starliner will undock and return to Earth with no one on board.
Now, here's the thing. Even though they're moving from Boeing to SpaceX to private companies, just like NASA's not a government agency, okay, you have to understand that SpaceX had a huge setback this week because it's rockets and it's very volatile. And one of their Falcon 9s exploded on its landing system. And to this day, again, weather has to do with these launches. There's so much that goes into it. That's why they can't just launch it up. And why can't they launch the rockets whenever they want? Think about it. This is big time dangerous stuff. Now let's talk about the astronauts themselves. All right. We're human beings. We're not meant to be in space. In fact, they're doing all sorts of goodies and experiments in space, including on human beings. Now, the gentleman we're going to show you right now is Scott Kelly. Now, Scott Kelly spent an extended period of time in space, but not even a full year. Remember, they're talking about the possibility of years before they can get these people off. February is the soft one. They're supposed to be there a week, folks. Think about all that planning going by the wayside, all of it. Scott Kelly's twin brother is Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly is, I believe, a congressman and not a senator, but I could be getting that wrong. He's in the U.S. government. NASA ran a massive experiment on the two because they were twins. They're into twinning, by the way. A lot of twin symbolism throughout the years as well with NASA, side point. But Kelly didn't even spend a year there. And I mean, he was hurting. You can't even walk when you get off the rocket from the space station. You're pretty much, I mean, they're coming to get you, especially when you spend that long a time on there. And we're gonna show you that right now in this clip.
Is spending a year on the space station, so we were both involved in experiments to understand better how to keep people alive for longer periods of time in space. You start doing this right when you get out of the capsule. the idea is to measure your performance right when you get out of the vehicle. Let's say you landed on Mars, to try to understand what your physical capability is. You walk with your eyes closed, like foot to foot, which is hard even when you haven't been in space for a year, especially on this uneven ground of Kazakhstan. You get on an airplane, the airplane flies to Norway, and you do it there.
Try to go in the toe.
And then it gets back to Houston, and you do them here again before you even get to go home. You're doing these tests for weeks.
When do I do this again?
Wednesday.
What? Like in 2 days, Wednesday?
Yes.
Eventually, you're doing them once a month. And it's a couple days every 6 months, which is where I'm at right now.
So there you see that you overall do get better over time, but think about deep space. Now they're telling you that SpaceX and Artemis are taking us to the moon. It's very diverse, by the way, diverse astronauts. That's a sell. That's ridiculous. Think about it. Almost 250,000 miles, and I think maximum human beings since the Apollo days have been 400 miles in space. Those people weren't even in deep space. And that's another point I want to make. I don't think we really know what deep space is. We're finding invisible fields around our planet all the time that obviously are interacting with everything else. Okay? How much do we know about things that are farther and farther away? A lot of it's guesswork, but they portray it with their narrative that they know so much, and we should bend the knee to this knowledge. It's extremely dangerous and narrative, by the way, because if you have an agency that is willing to lie to you for decades, okay, decade upon decade, and that's what they've done, okay? The vast majority of what's going on in space is the weaponization of space, whether that's done through subcontractors or NASA. Again, I want to reiterate the footage you were watching up there of this, all brought to you by Starlink. All right, and I do think there is right now a changing of the guard between Boeing and SpaceX as kind of the face of this. I think that Boeing eventually will make a comeback, but that comeback only happens if these people get what they want with the restriction of travel with most human beings on the planet and bringing in automation on a level that we can't imagine in our commercial fields of flight. And that's something NASA has been a very, very big part of. That's another thing people don't get. All right, it's not only about the modernization and automation of that system, but NASA, through their Next Gen program, and anybody can look it up, they've automated so many people out of their own jobs. All right, and they brag about it. I remember doing this video for, I don't know, it was a watch along with like a 1 hour thing with this smug NASA administrator talking about all these other agencies within the United States and subdivisions that he would go in, they would assess everything. And it was kind of like Office Space. They'd go in, they'd assess everything, and they'd say, all right, here's who we're going to get rid of and why we're going to get rid of them. And we're going to keep these people around just long enough to train the people that will replace them. All right, as they bring in new automated systems, they get trained the basics, they get integrated into the new stuff. I mean, and we've cut so many costs, cut so many jobs. That's what NASA's really about, right? Yes, the space stuff is there. But just like when I show you Dennis Bushnell, who's the chief scientist there for years and years and years, and with NASA for decade upon decade upon decade, only 20% of the stuff he was working on was in space. And when you started talking to him about real satellite technology, aka the stuff that is integrating with weapon systems, he would just sit there and laugh and go, no comment. Yeah, he couldn't wait to tell you about what? Directed evolution. Right? Couldn't wait to tell you about the merging of man and machine to the point where at the end of the day, you become them, they become you, or you have human contaminated machines. Lovely, I know. Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and if you enjoyed that segment, I want to let you know that I am live 5 days a week over at TNT.news, and if you go there, you can also interact in the chat. It is 3 to 5 Eastern Time. We are global, baby. So again, if you dug that segment, please come check me out every Monday through Friday at TNT.news.